Hello. As you can see, we are switching things up a little bit today. I got a new microphone, so hopefully the audio will be a little bit better than it has been in the past. Everybody say hello to Stanley. So in today's video, we are going to be putting together a miniature kit. But first, let's rewind to 2023. Our story begins with a coffee shop miniature kit that I received for Christmas. This was also the year that I did my 20 illustrations challenge, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So somewhere throughout the process, I decided to revamp the coffee shop kit into a coffee shop worthy of the Meraki Meadow. Behold, the Cardinal Coffee Shop. I repainted a lot of the elements, added some exposed brickwork in the most unsafe way possible, and even added a few little clay elements of my own making. So this little coffee shop inspired the illustration for my shop's theme, and the Cardinal Coffee Shop became a painting as well. Fast forward to Christmas of 2023 when I received my next miniature kit, a study. Overflowing with books galore, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with this one. I wanted to try reversing the process this time, to take one of the illustrations I'd already painted and use it as the inspiration for the kit. My goal was seemingly simple: revamp the study kit into Fergus the Fox's Meraki Meadow library. But as is often the case, my goal would turn out to be wildly more complicated than I originally thought. So let's start with the frame itself. In the illustration, the walls are this sort of light, springy green. Somehow over the years, my supply of acrylic paints has greatly dwindled, so I decided to use house paint instead. This also remedied the problem of having to mix up enough of the same shade of green to cover the whole surface area. So this is the color of my living room, and it fit pretty closely, I would say, to the color in the illustration, so we went with it. It's also fairly thick, so it only took a couple of coats to fully cover this kind of medium brown of the board. I decided to use an X-style brush stroke to kind of mimic the look of like a lime wash texture. Things in the Meraki Meadow are a little old, a little weathered, a little dilapidated, and I thought that the lime wash look would really help communicate that. Do you see it at all in the end result? No, not really. Basically all of the walls are obscured with the shelving and the frames and such, but I know it's there, so that makes me happy. Next up, the flooring. So one of my biggest character flaws is the inability to learn my lesson. I am fated to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. If you watched the first mini kit video, you heard me cry and grumble about making the flooring out of these little popsicle stick thingies. It took freaking forever, my hands were cramping, I almost lost an eye when the sticks inevitably shattered from time to time while I was cutting them. But I don't know, I think it must just be like having a baby. Like you just forget the pain of childbirth and you're like, oh yeah, let's have another one, that'll be fun. So I went to Walmart, bought more popsicle sticks, and did it all over again. Did I grumble the whole time? Yes. Were my hands absolutely dead afterwards? Yup. Did I learn my lesson this time? Probably not. Anywho, so I started off by painting the base flooring black, that way any gaps in the floor would just look like shadows and not this like icky white base. It just creates a little bit more depth. So my method for the flooring was fairly simple. When you look at like an actual wood flooring, the planks are staggered so the seams aren't all lined up. Usually there are at least a couple of different sizes of planks, and you kind of plan out how you lay them down. So that's what I did here. I made 2 sizes of planks and created a pattern for placing them. Small, large, small, small, then a row of 3 larges, then small, small, large, small, and another row of large, large, large. Hopefully you can see what I mean in the footage. I don't know why I felt the need to explain all of that. All in all, it just staggers the boards in a more appealing way while still maintaining a pattern so I don't have any accidental seam tangents. I loved these few planks that had a little bit more natural variations in the wood grain and the color, so I tried to push those toward the front where we'd actually see them in the end. And next came one of the most fun parts of the entire process: staining the floor. So in the first kit, I made a stain from watercolors, and that didn't go super great. Like, it's not bad, but it's not exactly what I was wanting. So I decided to use what little acrylics I still had and mix them with water for this stain, and it turned out so much better. I mixed up some brown, a teeny itty bitty smidge of black, and some orange for a little bit of warmth, and it made this really nice dark brown stain. Now, I did a lot of color mixing for this kit, and one of the concoctions I'm most proud of is the metallic paint for all of these little handles and knobs. But let's rewind. So in the first kit, I went straight in with acrylic paints on the things that I wanted to repaint, but that didn't really work the greatest. A lot of the elements were made either of plastic or like this super smooth wood stuff, so the acrylic didn't really stick very well, and it ended up getting kind of chunky in places. So I decided to work smarter this time and go with spray paint. I could pick out the exact color I wanted, get a much better coverage on the pieces, and save myself a lot of time and a lot of frustration.
Awesome!
But for some dumb reason, I'd already glued on all of the little knobs and handles, so those got covered in the spray paint as well.
Not awesome.
I now had two options: leave them the way they were, or attempt to mix up some sort of metallic paint and redo them. I really wanted to put my full effort into making this kit exactly what I wanted it to be, so I gave the metallics a try. I have these shimmery pigment powders, so I combined a bit of the orange, a bit of this like yellow ochre, and a little bit of brown and orange acrylics, and to my greatest surprise, it was exactly what I was wanting. The powder pigments were just the right amount of shimmery to give it that metallic effect without it just looking sparkly, if that makes sense. It was definitely tedious painting all those little elements. I had to be very, very precise, which is not my strong suit. But I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm glad I made the effort. I also think this bronzy shade pairs really nicely with the teal. Next up was weathering the shelves. I am not the least bit ashamed to say that I am now a weathering addict. It combines two of my favorite things: old stuff and dry brushing. I love things that look a little bit ancient, a little bit distressed, like that kind of tainted elegance concept. It looks lived in, and I love that look, especially for the Meraki Meadow. So I mixed up some of this dusty, darker blue and went arguably a little bit crazy with the weathering. Getting in all the little nooks and crannies, going over where the bottoms of the shelves have scraped across the floor. I was having so much fun that I basically just attacked everything with the dry brushing. The feet of the little table, the ladder shelf, etc. I don't know, it just gives everything so much more life. Just popping in with a word from our sponsor, me. If you like my artwork and want to see more of it, Patreon is definitely the place for you. With the free tier, you can see weekly Meraki Monday sketches, as well as more behind the scenes, kind of day in the life sort of things. In the $3 cozy tier, you'll receive a monthly digital zine chronicling my creative journey, including sketchbook snippets, new illustrations and work in progress pieces, inspirations, etc. You'll also get access to occasional exclusive YouTube videos, like time-lapses of my full painting process and color comp ideations. But if you're a creative ready to dive deeper into your own creative practice, then the Curious Creatives tier is for you. For $15 a month, you'll get the study curriculum for our current curiosity quests, exploring things like scene studies, plein air painting, anatomy, values. You'll get lifetime access to the Curious Creatives Discord group where you can chat with other members, receive feedback on the assignments, and grow alongside other artists. Anywho, I'd love for you to join us over on Patreon at any tier level, so if that's something you're interested in, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump via the link in the description. And now, back to the video. Behold, one of the most intense yet exhilarating parts of the process, building the chair. So the kit came with a red fabric, but I picked out this really fun plaid for the upholstery instead. I don't know, Fergus the Fox just kind of strikes me as a plaid kind of guy, you know? Now this process was tedious simply because there's a lot of cutting and a lot of gluing. You have to trace over the pattern pieces, then make these little cuts in specific places so that when you fold it overlaps in a certain way so it's not all bunchy and wonky. Which it still kind of ended up being bunchy and wonky in some places, but hey, you know, the Meraki Meadow's all about wonkiness. The gluing portion of this process almost made me lose my mind. Not the having to do it part, that part was fine. It was the aftermath. The amount of super glue that had caked itself onto my fingers was devastating, to say the least. I cannot stand the feeling of dryness or cakiness on my fingertips. I tried everything to get it off. I tried acetone and peroxide, rubbing alcohol, sugar scrub, and nothing was working. So I just had to walk around like this for a few days until it eventually came off, and let me tell ya, it made me want to rip my eyebrows off or something.
Yuck.
But like we talked about earlier, I don't learn my lesson, and this happened not once, but twice more throughout the process of putting this kit together. Anywho, I absolutely loved how the chair turned out. I think it's super cute, super cozy, but I also felt like it was missing a little something. Which brings me to the biggest challenge of this project, sculpting a character. Like we talked about in this video, the creative practice is often plagued by fears. Fear of failure, of imperfection, of not liking what we'll create. I've been doing a lot of deep work to let go of my fears and create with more joy, to worry less about the outcome and actually love the process. But y'all, that fear still gets to me sometimes, and it almost kept me from making the part of this project that I'm most proud of. So I decided I wanted to make a little sculpture of Fergus the Fox to sit in the chair. Now, I've never sculpted characters before. My clay experience is food and food alone. So I went into this feeling massively underqualified to even give it a try. This was potentially hours of work that might amount to nothing more than garbage can fodder. But one of the things I've been learning and relearning over the past year is that the key to true growth is in doing the hard things. The things that scare you and excite you at the same time. The things that sound entirely unachievable. The things that you can't stop dreaming about. Because you'll never know if you can unless you try. So, I tried. I grabbed my block of air dry clay, which is rapidly dwindling and drying out. I got my tools, whipped up some new slip, grabbed some aluminum foil for a little bit of a base, and got to work. It was very slow going and very rough. It had been probably close to a year since I'd last sculpted anything, and I was pretty rusty. It was a lot of me just trying things and seeing if it was gonna work or not. I had to do some mental gymnastics of sculpting the clothes onto him without having to create more layers. Carving indentations for where the vest lands and where the cuffs of the sleeves sit. I tend to be more of a form or volume-based artist and less of a line-based one anyways, so I think working with an actual 3D medium like clay suits me fairly well. After the clay pieces dried for a few days, I took a file to them to shave down the rougher edges, clean up the planes of the face, refine some of the details, and let me tell you, this was wildly therapeutic. There is something so soothing about just filing away at a little piece of clay. I don't know, man, I guess that's my new hobby. There was a ton of clay dust. But I was able to scoop it all up into a little pot, mix it with some water, and use it as a new slip pot for future projects.
Reduce, reuse, recycle, am I right?
Anyhow, after filing and priming, it was time to paint. I was much more confident about painting Fergus than about sculpting him. Obviously, I'm a lot more familiar with paint and brushes than clay and scraper thingies. I don't know what these tools are actually called. So I mixed up this sort of burnt orange color and began the layering process. I tried to preserve the white from the primer for the details like the white patch on his face. So a lot of my Meraki Meadow characters have some sort of swoopy detailing with their fur. This kind of M swoop that Fergus and Fiona have, the jagged ombre of Miss Totter's arms, a similar kind of swoopy thing with Ricky the Raccoon's tail. It's a little bit more on the designy side, and I don't know, I really like it. I've done a lot of pondering about this, and I think it might be a Littlest Pet Shop influence. So story time, I was a huge Littlest Pet Shop kid. I had like a bajillion of those things, and I created entire cities out of them. Fellow 2000s kids, please let me know if this was your thing too. Anywho. So a lot of them had these more designy fur patterns, so I think that might have been a little bit of the inspiration here, I don't know. I decided to paint each piece separately before gluing it all together to make it a little bit easier on myself. I wanted to make sure all the little nooks and crannies were painted. Now, obviously, this is already a 3D thing, like it's a sculpture, but that doesn't mean we can't create even more depth with paint. So in places like the sleeve cuffs and the overlap of his waistcoat vesty thing, I added a little bit more dimension and shading. Is it necessary? No. Does it make it look a little bit cooler? In my opinion, yes. Now, I did run into a little bit of an issue when putting him together. I didn't fully measure out my clay while I was sculpting each part to ensure that he would in fact fit in the chair, and he did not. So we had to do a little bit of finagling and repositioning of some of the elements, moving up his arm to sit on the armrest, curving the tail as close to the body as I could. We got there in the end, but it was pretty close for a minute, I'm not gonna lie. I was not confident I could get him to fit. Anywho. So the kit came with this little silver receptacle thingy and like 3 red beads. And the manual was like,
glue these little bead dudes into the metal thingy and you've got a fruity apple bowl.
And everything in me was like,
absolutely not. We can do better than this.
So I sculpted my own. Well, I ended up with peaches. They're a little bit easier to sculpt than apples are. But either way, I thought my fruit bowl was way cooler. I also ended up using a little bit of that metallic paint to tie it in with the bronze theme. Next up, we have these little decorator box thingies. Basically, you cut out these little paper pieces and very meticulously fold them. Now here's the thing, it's not like it's all that hard, but it's very tedious, very repetitive. Lots of fold this tiny little triangle just right so it fits exactly the way it's supposed to. And same with the folded books. It's a lot of cutting and folding and cutting and folding, and I'm gonna be honest, I did not do them all. At one point, I thought I'd cut out all of them and was like,
Okay, I'm making progress.
And then I looked down at the floor and saw that a whole nother page of foldy books had fallen and were waiting to be cut out, and I did maybe half of those and was like,
Dude, I'm done. I think we have enough books here.
Because this wasn't all of the books. Oh no. There were more. Actual like accordion foldy books with like real pages. And then there were also these books. Little boards with covers glued onto them. Genuinely, this took hours. And don't get me wrong, I prefer these books to like the origami ones because they look and feel more like real books. But my gosh, I was so tired by the end of it. One of my favorite and most personal parts of this project were the picture frames. I used one or two of the papers that the kit provided for the frames, but ultimately I decided it would be a lot more fun to use some of my own paintings, particularly the Meraki Meadow ones. Fergus the Fox is definitely the kind of guy that would have pictures all over the place of his friends, his daughter, his favorite places in the meadow. There's bits and bobbles houses in the tree, Fiona's ice cream shop, a Halloween party, and the market night. There's also some more little random pieces like my Baker's Apprentice painting and Watching in Wonder illustration. This was definitely one of the more personal touches for this project, and it's very special to me. It's neat seeing my paintings miniaturized. Now, I am so sorry, but I did not film the process of putting together the chandelier. After the series of unfortunate events that occurred with the last kit's lightings, I enlisted help with this one. Shout out to my dad for spending a decent chunk of his Saturday helping me put together all the wiring and making sure it actually worked. One of the last elements I had to put together were these little flower vases. That was something. As in the first kit, I got very confused about how to fold the paper flowers, and they ended up kind of weird and smushy. It is what it is. Let's move on. So all that was left at this point was to put it all together. The staging, if you will. This is probably my favorite part. Again, probably a Dollhouse Littlest Pet Shop influence. I honestly think I spent more time staging the environments when I played than actually making the little dolls act out a storyline. For me, the real story was in the world I was building and not in any actual plot. Anywho. So I worked on filling up the shelves with the books, trying to make sure that the right books went in the right places. Some of them only fit on specific shelves, and I had not kept track of which ones those were. So, I think one of my favorite parts was making the little stacks of books. Layering them in fun ways, having some of them lean on one another or start tipping off of the shelves. Fergus is definitely more of a classy guy, but he's not a stickler for having everything neat. He gets that sometimes the shelves get a little bit disorganized, or a kid leaves a stack of books on the floor. Those kinds of elements just make it feel like the characters really exist in the scene, and I love that. After I put all the books and such on the shelves, it was time to bring in the meadow itself. Every Meraki Meadow environment has some amount of overgrown plant life making its way through the scene. Moss growing off of the stools, vines hanging from the ceiling, or leaves creeping down the walls. And Fergus's library is no exception. Using some of the leftover green wire from the first kit, I made a big ol' vine to drape across one of the shelves. I cut up a bunch of old scrapbook papers and magazine pages to make the leaves and attached them in various clumps to create something kind of resembling a vine. It's not fantastic, but it's there. Getting that thing glued on was a beast though, let me tell ya. Seriously, I'd get like one part glued down and another part would pop right back up, or a leaf would fall off or stick to my hand. It finally stayed and I have not touched it since. I don't even hardly look at that vine because I'm so afraid that if I like blink wrong, the wind is gonna blow it off the shelf. Anywho, probably my favorite meadowy element here is the moss. So this was also left over from the first kit, and I was literally itching to get this put in there. Hiding it on the shelves, slipping it into the books, and tucking it into all the little nooks and corners of the walls. This was that like chef's kiss finishing touch that really brought it all together for me and turned it from a library into the Meraki Meadow library. So this is it. This is the study turned Meraki Meadow library. It took me far longer than I thought it was going to, but honestly, it was worth every single second. These mini kits for me are all about fun, just enjoying my creative practice and enjoying like a different facet of it. It's not drawing or painting, it's sculpting and designing and building. It's an element of my creativity that isn't like monetizable, you know? Like it's not a painting I can sell or make prints of. I mean, I still filmed the process. Do I still get AdSense from the video? Yes. Am I still gonna shamelessly plug my shop full of prints, stickers, and courses for cozy and curious creatives? Absolutely. But it's a part of my practice that is kind of just for me and doesn't go beyond making a video about it. I love that it's just a longer process where I'm not super concerned about the end result. I'm just making something and seeing where it goes. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed revamping the Meraki Meadow library with me, and a very big thank you to the cozy and curious creatives over on Patreon. If you'd like to see me put together the first kit, then head on over to watch this video next. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys!